So, we've all seen the recent Resident Evil adaptation. Resident Evil, Welcome to Raccoon City. And well, it turned out as many people predicted, didn't it? Isolating it down to just an attempt to create an entertaining zombie movie, I give it a C. Maybe a C plus if I'm being really generous. Okay? But as a promised, faithful adaptation of Resident Evil 2, or Resident Evil 1, we'll get to that in a minute, I'd give it an F minus. It is a complete and utter failure and a totally unnecessary waste of a movie. There was no reason why this movie should have been as bad as it was. It could have been a license to print money, couldn't it? To start a whole new series, a completely new franchise. But no, the creators knew better and they have paid the price. I think I must have watched probably 20 plus fan reviews of the movie, and most seem to agree that the root of the problem was the plot itself. The choice of the story that the writer fell on essentially doomed the movie, unless it was going to be over 3 hours long and made with a budget of over $150 million, and neither of those things was going to happen. The plot was basically Resident Evil 2 with Resident Evil 1 reduced to little more than a after the fact subplot to keep the STARS team busy until they all meet up in the end in the train. And the basic premise of Resident Evil 2 was watered down from the fall of an entire city against hordes of zombies roaming the streets and burning cars and police helicopters flying overhead to some sleepy nowheresville where the zombies just walk out of their houses down the block to rattle on the gates of the police station. Okay, so that's what they did wrong. But here's my idea of where people could go right. A disclaimer, this is just my take on it. Take it or leave it. So, where to begin? At the very beginning, of course. Not the retcon Resident Evil 0 either. Resident Evil 1 is the obvious choice to make a Resident Evil movie. Not just because it sets the ground for the entire Resident Evil universe, but the story of the game is completely contained, starting well and concluding neatly. It contains the characters in a relatively small location and for a small time period, compared to, for example, the expanse of Raccoon City and the many days and nights that it took to be consumed and ultimately destroyed. This is the premise that I will be working from. I am convinced that the secret to making a great Resident Evil movie lays in constructing a solid plot which the script and the action can flow from. Resident Evil 1 gives you this plot, but work needs to be done to translate this from the very different medium of a video game into that of the silver screen. I am going to say this only once. There are real and serious problems in taking the pure Resident Evil 1 story and just filming it with real-life actors. A direct adaptation, as many have wrongly suggested, would fail. You cannot have the camera just follow Jill and Chris around the mansion as they solve dozens upon dozens of puzzles one after the other. I mean, that would be terrible. I mean, if you want that, just go look at the many speedruns there are on YouTube. It doesn't add anything to the story. So what is the story of Resident Evil 1? We have to reverse engineer this. At its heart, Resident Evil 1 is just about escape. Our characters are in a bad place and they need to get out. It's that simple. The drama is found from the obstacles that the characters must traverse to achieve their objective of escape. The obstacle is the setting of the mansion itself, and some have likened it to an architectural Rubik's Cube that happens to be covered in bloodthirsty monsters. But the mansion also has another level to its puzzle. not just in the three dimensions, but in the fourth by way of time. The great riddle of the mansion is working out its secrets as a covert laboratory for the evil Umbrella Corporation and their own wicked agenda. So to escape the mansion, you have to traverse these three elements: the monsters, the locks, and the secrets. The base reality of the mansion is that it is in fact an illusion, camouflaged to disguise its true purposes. It is from this that the locks are necessitated to protect its secrets, and the monsters are as a direct result of this failure to manage the lab and keep its activities contained. And how do we translate these elements into something that can actually be filmed? My suggestion is this. The secrets can be revealed in the characters finding clues that lead to flashbacks, and then conclusive dialogue between the characters. The final secret being the exposure of the lab. The locks, the puzzles, have to be condensed down from a dozen plus to 3 or less. They need clearly defined tasks with no ambiguity. The monsters can be traversed in action scenes with major climactic scenes involving boss fights. The monsters being obviously antagonistic to the fulfillment of finding the keys to breach the locks. It couldn't be simpler. We know what the mansion is and how it works. So now we understand the mechanics of the mansion. So what do we do with it? Well, it is the arena that our heroes, Chris and Jill, or Jill and Chris, either way, are faced with. Many others have noted that each character's journey does not run parallel to the other. So when you play as Jill, this creates its own universe with Chris getting slung in jail, and vice versa. So you could just focus on one of the two main characters and have the other rescued from jail at the end. Or, as I think most would suggest, that the story of Chris and Jill should run alongside each other, each one having their own ordeals through different parts of the mansion. Now we could have them staying together throughout the movie, or we could give them their own independent journey, starting together, getting separated, and then reuniting towards the end. Wider still, the basic structure of a script can be extracted pretty easily from the game. And that is number 1, before the mansion; number 2, travel to the mansion; number 3, the mansion; number 4, the lab; and then finally, number 5, the escape. And you could add a number 6 in the form of a wrapping up or an aftermath. Again, in reducing the excessive puzzle burden, I think it's fair to say that you're going to have to remove the settings of the guardhouse and the courtyard and the caves. They would have to be dropped. It's simply too big. The mansion leading to the lab is the bare minimum that the story needs without branching out from this. So, if we conjoin the two basic outlines of the Chris and Jill structure upon the basic structure of the game, we get this. Number 1, Chris and Jill are together before the mansion. Number 2, they are together in the journey to the mansion. Number 3, they split it up in the mansion. Number 4, they are reunited at the lab. And number 5, they escape together. And number 6, they're probably together in the aftermath. Okay, it's quite simple. An interesting feature of the game is that there is almost no backstory. It is basically that our heroes are off out to investigate a mansion that Bravo team went into because of reports of attacks and murders emanating from there. And that's it. Again, that's great for a game whereby the playable characters are essentially empty shells and vehicles for the player to step into and experience the game through their perspective. But for a movie, we will always be third-party observers. We simply need more time to get to know who these people are and why we should care about them. I mean, just who the hell are these people? So, from this, it is unavoidable that we need a much longer before the mansion setup. Yes, the drive of this is to initiate the causal chain that sends the STARS team into the jaws of death, but this is experienced by our characters in their own world. This before setting to me is obviously Raccoon City and the RPD, with the STARS boys and girls doing their daily things until they're sent off out. We also need some kind of character development throughout the screenplay. You cannot subject our heroes to the ordeal of escaping the mansion and not have them affected in some way. The characters need to traverse an internal ordeal just as much as a physical one. My view is that these are 20-something young professionals that work as wilderness police and are thrown into a nightmare scenario and have their own natures tested. Chris's macho bravado nearly gets him killed, for example. Jill's systematic intellect makes her miss the obvious, and also nearly gets her killed. Barry overcomes his own emotional faults through his treachery and his redemption. And we are given essentially a view into the real test about how these characters not only overcome the mansion, but discover the secrets of the mansion as well, and realize what the place is actually for and their role in it. By the end of the film, the characters should be different people. They've mastered the mansion, but have yet to defeat the root of the evil itself, that being Umbrella. That would cap the movie nicely, I think, with a scene or two at the end where the effect and consequences of the obliteration of the mansion and most of the STARS team is explored. And this is, of course, the natural setup for Resident Evil 2. So what are we going to do with all this? Well, I've got to put my money where my mouth is, metaphorically, and I've actually wrote a Resident Evil 1 screenplay adaptation to see if any of this can actually be achieved. And writing, I've discovered that there were other problems that emerged that needed to be solved, and I'll go through these now. We've got the problem of Albert Wesker, specifically how to reveal his treachery and his overall scheme to lure the STARS into the mansion to test the bioweapons in the field. I went with the choice of revealing this close to the start, not long after the team reached the mansion in the main hall. Now, why did I do this? Well, firstly, Wesker is very creepy, and it's pretty obvious under the tropes of film lore that a sunglass-wearing British guy is pure evil. Okay? And also, the secret of his treachery has been out in the public domain for 25 years or more. We all know he's a traitor, so there's no real benefit in concealing that which we already know. Also, the script needs an overarching villain to personify the obstacle of the mansion, someone to blame for why our heroes are in the struggle. This villain can only be achieved if Wesker is exposed as being the main villain pretty early on. And this is actually supported by the source material, as Wesker's imprisonment on one of the characters, presumably at gunpoint, occurs in the game. Emphasized when you play as Chris, you find Jill's gun on the floor. So it doesn't make much sense. Wesker is also walking around the mansion like Jill and Chris are. And to me, it seems much more sensible that he falls back into the lab to observe and record his experiment. Okay, just my take on it. Another correction that I borrowed from the Resident Evil 3 remake is the notion of the courageous Brad Vickers. The idea that the reason why he flies away leaving his friends behind is that he gets scared and then just hovers around the mansion for a few hours doesn't really work anymore. That he's forced to leave by the same mutant dog attack and his helicopter is damaged and needs repair are far more plausible reasons for his retreat and his delay in rescuing the survivors. I've also added a lot more scenes with Chief Irons as part of the build-up to Brad launching his rescue attempt, and some disappointing news from looking back to what I said before about things needing to be cut out. Yawn is in, Plant 42 is not. Or is it? Neptune is in, the Crimson Heads are in, there's lots of gore, lots of mayhem, lots of suffering, and lots of nods to the games, a few Easter eggs, and a few references. Oh, and there's no sex scenes, I'm afraid. Sorry. So how did it all turn out, you ask? Well, I think it's actually a pretty good piece of work. As long as people say it's better than the other Resident Evil films, which wouldn't be too difficult, I'd be a very happy bunny. The link is below. It's a completely free PDF. It is just a piece of fan fiction. Please don't sue me, Capcom. I love you guys. This is an homage to your genius, okay? I think, looking at it in retrospect, now that I've had enough time to leave it alone for a while, I could have written less flashback about the fall of the mansion. But when I wrote this, I found this really interesting, and this kind of grew out of control. So that's a sort of weakness to it, but I don't know, maybe some people like it. See what people think. The breakdown is as follows. 26% of the script is flashback to the staff of the mansion as the outbreak takes over. And yes, Lisa Trevor is in there. 33% consists of scenes with Jill and Chris together. 13% is Jill-led scenes where it's either her on her own or with Barry. 16% is Chris-led scenes where he's either on his own or he's with Rebecca or Wesker. And the rest is mostly Brad, Chief Irons, and a bit of Barry on his own, and some very minor introductory characters. So, all in all, I think it's pretty well balanced. 62% of the script has either Chris or Jill in it at any one time. So, what more do you want? And it gets to the mansion pretty fast. The doors open to the Great Hall on page 23 out of a script with 116 pages. Does it all work? Is it entertaining? I have fun writing it. I think it's the Resident Evil movie I'd like to see. That's just me. So I would really, really appreciate if people read the thing and told me what they think. Please be gentle. And if you don't like it, write improvements. Write your own script. Write the movie you want to see. That's what this little documentary is about. Can the fans write a better script than the Hollywood machine? And I think we can. Okay, over and out. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. It's a small thing, but it really helps us out. Also, if you'd like to help us in a one-off and easy way, you can buy us a coffee at the link below. Thank you.